Hello, driver's ed class. How are you all doing this fine day? So, today we are coming to you with our next to last lecture over the rules of the road book. We are going to be talking about Chapter 11, Safe Driving Tips. There are more safe driving tips that we will cover after we finish the rules of the road book. But for now, we're going to cover this chapter here and go over a few of the safe driving tips, and especially ones that are pertinent and relevant for you to know going into the permit exam. And then on Monday, we're going to cover the last rules of the road lecture, which includes chapters 12 and 13. That wraps up the rules of the road book. And then, I'm saying Monday, but if you're a future driver's ed class watching this, it may not be Monday. It'll be the next day, whatever that is. But anyway, we'll finish up the rules of the road book. We'll study for the permit exam. You'll take the permit exam, pass it with flying colors, and be ready to get your permit and start your driving adventure. So let's go ahead and get into today's lecture and see what we have in store for us. Safe driving. So this is something that is super important for people of all ages. There are many facets of safe driving. One thing for us to always remember is that driving is a privilege and a responsibility. It's a privilege, not a right. So that's something that's important for us to recognize. We've talked about it many times. Rights are things like life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. We all have a right to be alive. We all have a right to pursue happiness, to have the freedom to make decisions that are good for us. We don't all have the right to drive. Driving is not a right, it's a privilege. It's something special that you get to do. And to do that, you have to accomplish certain things. And one of the things that you got to do is you've got to show that you can be a good, safe driver. If you're not a good, safe driver, they're going to take that privilege away. Okay, so in addition to it being a privilege, it's also a really big responsibility. It's one of the few instances in life where your actions can have immediate and serious consequences for other people. So you make a bad decision behind the wheel of a car, and someone can die because of that bad decision. And sometimes people say, "Well, but I'm only affecting myself. If I make a bad decision and wreck, it's only me that's going to get hurt. I should have that right to be able to make that bad decision." That's not the way it works. I mean, you could very easily wreck into another car and that person be hurt or killed. Even if you are the one that is hurt or killed in the wreck, what about your loved ones? And now they have to deal with the consequences of that. So, it's not just you that's affected by that. So that's something that's really important for us to all understand, is that driving is a really huge responsibility. The decisions we make behind the wheel of a car carry life and death consequences. And we've got to be aware of that and make good decisions and make responsible decisions. A driver's got to obey all traffic laws and be prepared to react to other drivers and driving conditions. This is so key. Driving is a thinking activity. You can't just be mindlessly, behind that wheel. You've got to constantly be thinking. And this is one of the big reasons why distracted driving is such a problem, because when you are distracted by something else, you are not prepared to react to what's going on around you. So that's a really important thing for us to cover there. So there are two basic styles of driving. There's defensive driving, which is what we all should be doing and what we want to be doing. And then there's aggressive driving. That's what we don't want to be doing. Aggressive driving is things as simple as speeding, or even not using your turn signal, it's even things more severe than that, like whipping in front of people or brake checking someone, or, even things that are visually aggressive, like like giving somebody a signal that they're number one or something. If you're picking up what I'm saying here, making rude physical gestures towards another car, honking unnecessarily at other cars. All of these are types of aggressive driving. Anything that's going to be dangerous to someone else or put someone in a bad mood, in a altered state of mind, that's aggressive driving. Defensive driving, that's what we want to do. So always be prepared. Plan ahead. That goes back to what we talked about on the last slide. Be prepared to react. Plan ahead. If you can't avoid a crash, you might find yourself in a situation where you flat out can't avoid a crash. Remain calm. Good luck with that one, okay? Remain calm and choose the least dangerous situation, okay? Sometimes the least dangerous situation is heading towards the ditch to avoid a head-on collision. Sometimes the least dangerous situation is hitting your brakes hard but not swerving and going ahead and hitting that deer, because it's less dangerous to hit the deer that walked out in front of you than it is to try to miss it and end up going in the ditch and flipping your car and hitting a tree and all sorts of bad things happening, okay? So that's a tough thing to do, but that is our goal, is to remain calm so that we can choose. If you can't remain calm, you're going to have a hard time choosing, and you're just going to be flat out reacting. And sometimes our reactions are wrong. So we want to stay calm so that we can still be alert and make that split-second decision. Okay, following distance, or maybe a better way to think about it is following time. So what we're talking about here is how far behind another car should you be? Well, there's not a certain number of feet, because as you change your speed, like here we're showing 25 miles per hour versus 70 miles per hour. As you change your speed, the number of feet behind someone that you should be is changing. So at 25 miles an hour, you only need to be 111 feet back. That's about a half a block, okay? At 70 miles per hour, you need to be 309 feet back. That's more than 2 blocks. That's about a block and a half or so. So, that's kind of tough to figure out. What's not tough to figure out, though, is time. And so really, when we measure following distance, the easier thing to measure is following time. How many seconds behind the vehicle in front of you are you? So when you're behind a vehicle and you're trying to figure out, hey, how far behind this vehicle am I? Pick a fixed object on the road. So here we see a road sign. When this car passes that road sign, and specifically we're talking about their back bumper, when their back bumper passes that road sign, we start counting in our head, or you can do it out loud, okay? But start counting in your head. 1001, 1002, 1003. You should be able to get to 1003 before you reach that same structure, that same object. Now, it's got to be a fixed object. Don't pick something that's moving, like another car or a pedestrian even, or anything that's moving. Pick something fixed, something stationary. And you can see with those 3 seconds, you're looking at 111 feet for 25 miles an hour, 243 feet for 55 miles per hour, 309 feet for 70 miles per hour. So you can see that's why we talk about time when we talk about following distance, because time is a more consistent thing to use. There are some things that are going to affect our following distance. Remember, if you go back to chapter 5, we talked about sharing the road with motorcycles, and we said instead of 3 seconds, you want to up it to 4, because motorcycles can stop faster. Also, if road or weather conditions are not good, you should again increase it to 4 or 5 seconds. Let's flip that, so you're not the one following, you're the one being followed. What if you find yourself in a situation where there's somebody tailgating you and it's really making you uncomfortable? Encourage them to pass. Don't stick your arm out the window. I can't get my arm. Don't stick your arm out the window and wave them on. That's not safe. But you can slow down a little bit and scoot to the right side of your lane. If they don't pass, it's totally okay to go ahead and slowly pull off the road. I've done this before. All right, just slowly pull off the road. They'll go around and then you can resume your driving. Okay. Do not deal with this aggressively. Don't encourage them to pass you and then you get right back up on them and tailgate them like, I'm going to show them how it feels. No. All right. You got to put those emotions aside and you got to just be a good defensive driver. Vehicle speed, driving too fast or, and oftentimes this is the problem for young drivers that are just learning. I'm talking about when you're on your permit phase. Driving too slowly also. This is why it's so important to get a lot of practice early on when you get your permit and do it in areas where there's not a lot of traffic. One of the things that you have to do as a driver is you have to get comfortable with proper speed. So when the speed limit in town is 30, you need to be going close to 30. You need to be going between 25 and 30 miles an hour. It is not okay in a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit to go 15 because you feel more comfortable driving 15. That's not okay. You need to be going close to the speed limit so that you are not slowing down traffic. That's really important. Now, once people get comfortable with speed, some people have a problem with driving too fast, and that falls into aggressive driving. It's not okay. It is not okay to say, well, I've just got a lead foot. That's just the way I am. I can't help it. It's not my fault that I like to drive fast. It's just the way I am. You cannot say that. That's not okay. Okay, remember, driving is a privilege. And with it comes responsibility. And if you're not mature enough to make good decisions, you're going to lose that privilege. You can't handle the responsibility. So get your head on straight and don't have that attitude. Regardless of the posted speed limit, weather and traffic conditions may make it necessary to drive more slowly. If it's raining, if it's snowing, if it's sleet, if it's a bad road, whatever, you might have to drive slower than the speed limit. Okay. Like I was saying, you should be matching the flow of traffic. It is not okay to drive way slower than the rest of the cars are driving. A few miles an hour, totally fine, But again, if you're on, let's say that you're on a highway, let's say you're on Route 4 and you're headed out to the interstate. That's a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. Let's say you're going past D Camp, south out of town. That's apparently this way in the video. You cannot drive 35 miles an hour in a 55 just because that's the speed you're comfortable with. No, get yourself on a rural road and practice and get yourself comfortable with faster speeds. You have to get yourself comfortable with that. It's not okay to drive on major roadways really slow. You can't do that. Okay. At the same time, sometimes the flow of traffic is really fast. Okay. The law says it's not okay to surpass the maximum posted speed limit just to match the flow of traffic. You're going to find yourself in some situations where if you're driving the speed limit, you're going to be getting passed a lot. So that's all I'm going to say about that. The law says you're not supposed to exceed the maximum speed limit. Doubling a vehicle speed quadruples the vehicle stopping distance. Doubling a vehicle speed quadruples the vehicle stopping distance. Speed is a killer. You get going too fast and you get in a wreck and your chances of survival are much reduced as you get going fast. For example, let's say at 40 miles per hour, your stopping distance is, let's just say 120 feet. Okay. That's from the time you realize you need to stop to the time you actually get the car stopped. So 40 miles an hour. You bump that up, 120 feet? You bump that up to 80 miles per hour, so you double your speed. You don't just double the stopping distance. It doesn't go from 120 to 240. It quadruples. It goes from 120 to 480. Okay, so doubling speed has a squared effect. Okay, that's getting a little mathematical there, but doubling your speed has a squared effect on stopping distance. So if you double the speed, it quadruples the stopping distance. That's because the force is so much greater and it takes so much more force to stop you. So speed is really dangerous. If you want to drive fast, go to a racetrack. Okay, there are racetracks that have, amateur nights, and you can go out and drive on them. Okay, drowsy driving. This used to be called highway hypnosis. It's the same thing. Now they just call it drowsy driving. I think this is a better term for it because it describes exactly what's happening. You're driving along and you can't keep your eyes open. You're falling asleep. You're going to experience this at some point. This is a driving impairment that you literally cannot avoid. You're going to experience this at some point. All of us experience it. So it's not whether or not you are going to experience it, it's what do you do when you are experiencing it. Okay, so there are lots of things that you can do if you find yourself in this situation. If there's somebody else in the car with you, converse with them, have a conversation. That really helps. Switch spots with them. Let them drive and you ride shotgun or whatever the case is. That's assuming that they're a licensed driver. Okay. Have a snack, have something to drink, turn the air conditioner on, turn the radio to a station that works for you. If it's music that you need, or if it's talk radio that you need, or whatever you need to help you stay awake. If those things aren't working, if there's no one else in the car so you can't switch, or if talking to someone isn't working, or having a snack, if it's not working and you're still having trouble staying awake, pull over. It is not okay to drive drowsy. Not okay. I've had this experience lots of times, but one time I would have been, I guess I was 18 at the time. Yeah, I had to be. I was 18 at the time, and this is not the exact picture of my car, but this was my car. My first car, I bought whenever I was 17. I had saved up money. I bought whenever I was 17. I bought an 86 Chevy Camaro, blue with T-tops. I love that car. Still one of my favorite, probably my favorite vehicle that I've ever owned. It was a total piece of junk. Okay. It was not a great car. This was 1994. It was, already 8 years old. It had some problems. It had some dents, but I loved that car. I loved the T-tops. It had a 5-speed transmission. Okay. So I'm driving home from my girlfriend's house. She lived in Pawnee. I lived in Stonington. It was about a half-hour drive between the two. It was late at night, okay? And I'm driving home, and I cannot keep my eyes open. And so finally, I get to the point where I'm like, I've got to pull over. All right, this is dangerous. I'm going to wreck my stinking car. So I pull over off onto a country road, just a little 2-lane, unmarked rural road, pull over to the side. That was a stick shift car. I put the car in neutral, pulled up the parking brake. I didn't want to shut the car off because I wasn't sure how long I was going to sleep. I was going to take a nap is what I was going to do. And I left my running lights, my parking lights, these little amber lights down here in the front and the back. I left those on because it was nighttime and I didn't want somebody coming along and hitting me on the side of the road. So I lay the seat back, put the car in neutral, pull the parking brake up and leave it running. And I'm out. I'm taking a nap. Okay. That's what you should do. That's a good decision in that situation. Okay. I also had a bit of a habit of sleepwalking whenever I was a teenager. Well, this night I didn't end up sleepwalking outside of the car. No, I ended up sleep driving. So I wake up and I'm bouncing across an intersection in my car. I'm doing like 55, 60 miles an hour going down a country road, and I had been asleep. Okay. I mean, this is nuts. Yeah, I apparently, while I was sleeping, started sleep driving. I sat my seat up. I released the parking brake. I shifted through the gears and got myself up to speed. I don't know. It was a absolutely crazy experience. I am super glad that nobody got hurt, that I didn't hit anything, that I didn't crash, whatever. Okay. I don't know what to tell you to do differently in that situation. I think that's a pretty rare occurrence, but that was a scary moment, let me tell you. So Yeah, drowsy driving is going to happen. Don't drive drowsy and don't sleep drive. I don't know. That was a crazy experience. Okay, expressway driving. So this is interstate, is what we're talking about here when we say expressway. When you're getting on the interstate, you have to get going fast enough. This is another case where you've got to be comfortable with a certain amount of speed. So the traffic on the interstate's doing 70. When you're merging on the interstate, you've got to use that merging lane to gain enough speed, the necessary speed before merging. You need to be going at least 60 when you merge with traffic. If they're going 70 and you're going 40 or 45, you're going to get run over. You're going to cause a wreck. So you have got to be going faster than that. It's your responsibility to look for an opening in the traffic, to match your speed to that right speed for that opening. Use your turn signal, check your mirrors, check your blind spot, all that kind of stuff. You have the responsibility to merge. On the flip side of that, when you are exiting, do not slow down until you get onto the off-ramp, because there's other traffic on the interstate. And if you start slowing down before you ever get to the off-ramp, you're going to cause a backup behind you. Okay, someone might run into the back of you because you're not supposed to be slowing down to 40 miles an hour while you're still on the interstate. Get off on the exit ramp and then do your slowing down. Here's what we're talking about here. So here's the on-ramp. You got to really pick up some speed here. Get up to at least 60 before you merge over. When you're slowing down, keep your speed up. And then as you get onto the exit ramp, then you can slow down. They give you enough time there to slow down. Sometimes you got to get on the brakes kind of hard, but there's enough space there to slow down. Now, one exception to that might be if it's really icy or bad weather. You may have to start slowing down a little early, because if this off-ramp, if this exit ramp is slick, you got to make sure that you're safe and you're not going to go flying off the exit ramp. Okay, nighttime driving. Never overdrive a vehicle's headlights. I'm going to pause this real quick so I can draw a picture. Oh my goodness. I am so not an artist. I'm horrible at drawing things to begin with, but then you make me draw something with a computer mouse. It's really embarrassing. But hey, here we go. All in the name of driver's ed, right? So here is our car. Yes, this rectangle is our car. And this lopsided shape here that's kind of yellow, that's our headlights right there. And so what we're talking about here when we say never overdrive a vehicle's headlights. So you've got to be driving at a speed that once some obstruction comes into view, like this deer here, that's supposed to be a whitetail, but there's no white on my drawing scale over here. So we used light blue because that was the best I had. And yes, those are antlers. But if you're driving at a speed where once that deer appears in your headlights, you don't have time to stop, then you are overdriving your headlights. So you've got to drive at a speed where whatever you can see in your headlights, you can get the car stopped before you get to that. That's what that means. And so this applies to fog driving, nighttime driving, driving in the rain or snow or any of those kind of things. You can never overdrive your headlights. That drawing was so bad. All right, let's move on. So also with headlights, as you're approaching another car on the roadway, you have to turn your headlights from bright to dim 500 feet before you get to them. Okay, 500 feet. So, it's kind of hard to judge that kind of distance. But if you figure you're driving 55, they're driving 55, that's 81 feet per second. So at least 6 seconds before you meet another car, you should have switched your headlights to dim. You probably ought to do it a little before that anyway. And when you're coming up behind another car, at least 300 feet before you get to them, you got to switch it to dim. So that's about the length of a football field. And really, you ought to do it a little before that also. Okay, so depending on the rural intersections. This is huge, especially for our part of the country. And we'll talk about this more later, but depending on the time of the year, it might be really difficult to see other drivers. When you've got crops up in the field, especially corn, but even soybeans. Sometimes people think, oh, it's just a soybean field. I can see. Soybeans can be tall enough that especially if you're in a car or there's another car, even if you're in a truck, you might not be able to see them. So even soybeans are tall enough that they can obstruct your vision. But anyway, it's difficult to see other drivers. So uh, even if that intersection is not marked with a stop or yield sign, you still need to slow down and look both ways before entering the intersection. And as tight as the crops are to the corners in some places, you might even have to basically stop and really move slowly forward to see if you can see. Here's an example. This is Mile Road, and then up here is Windy Hill. And if you turn left here, it goes to Windy Hill. If you turn right, you can get to, I think it's called Schoolhouse Road. So this is out on the northwest corner of town. Well, this picture from Google Images was taken at a time where there weren't tall crops in the field. Yeah, there's some ground cover here, but there were not tall crops. If you go on the same road right now, this is a cornfield, and you cannot see who's coming from the left. So as you come up to this T intersection, you can't just go barreling up there and turn left and head into town, or turn right and head over to Schoolhouse. You have got to come up here and basically stop and really slowly inch forward, okay? Head-on approaches. So this is if you're headed towards a car and all of a sudden there's a car in your lane coming at you. What do? Well, immediately slow down to reduce speed, because if there is a collision, reducing speed reduces the force of that collision. Okay, so immediately slow down and pull over to the right-hand side of the road and sound your horn. Okay. Now, in general, I'm not a big proponent of using your horn for things. I think using your horn to yell at other drivers just makes people mad and doesn't generally solve things. But in a situation like this, absolutely use your horn. Okay. Because maybe they're not paying attention. So yeah, slow down, pull over to the right, and sound your horn. I got to tell you about the absolute scariest driver's ed situation I've ever had. I told you already about the beta, and that was scary, but this one tops that. And the student driver did absolutely nothing wrong in this situation. This was caused by another driver. So when I was teaching at Auburn High School, we were up at Chatham, and we were coming back towards Auburn. So Auburn is up here in the distance. You can't quite see it, but these trees here are actually in Auburn, these little trees up here. Okay, so we had left Chatham and we're coming towards Auburn. And as we're coming around this curve, it's hard to tell here, but behind us is a curve and a little bridge. This was an afternoon lesson, and I was tired. The afternoon sun's beating on you, and I yawned, and so I'm yawning, and I'm coming out of the yawn, and I hear the student that's driving gasp. And as I'm coming out of the yawn, I open my eyes, and here comes a car towards us, and then in the other lane was a second car passing this car. Okay. And I mean, they're close already. They're already close to us. And this is a no passing zone for them, but they're passing anyway. And I reach up to grab the wheel and I lift my foot to hit the brake. And this car that was in our lane, before I could even move us over onto the shoulder, this car headed over to the shoulder, and this car kept coming in their lane. And we drove right between the two of them in our lane. It was terrifying. I mean, here we are doing 55, and here come two cars towards us, and we went right between the two of them. It was nuts. So, like I said, the kid driving our car didn't do anything wrong. He was preparing to slow down. I was preparing to slow us down. And while we were doing that, this all happened really fast. This car already headed over to the shoulder. So our best course of action was to stay the course. And we all survived to tell the story, but man, was it scary. That was a scary thing. So assuming that you've got more time and the car that is coming towards you doesn't take to the shoulder, you should take to the shoulder. Slow down and get over to the shoulder. Hopefully you're never in that situation. Skidding. So if you find yourself in a skid, and a skid is where the back end starts to come around, okay? The book says turn into the skid. I have always found that wording kind of confusing. What does that mean? So if I'm skidding this way, which way do I turn my wheels to turn into the skid? So what I always say is turn the wheels the direction you want to go. Okay? So if your front end is farther to the right than you want it to be, like this picture, turn your wheels back to the left. If your front end is farther to the left than you want it to be, turn your wheels back to the right. So point the wheels the direction you want the car to go. And that's the same thing as what they're saying with turn into the skid, but I find that a little easier to understand and remember. A blowout. A blowout is when you have rapid loss of air pressure in a tire. So a tire just boom blows up, okay, and you lose air pressure. Don't slam on the brake. That can actually cause you to lose control of the car. So just gently slow the car down, pull over to the side of the road, and call for help, or find a safe spot to change your tire, whatever the situation is. Brake failure. I've only ever had this happen to me once, about 5 years ago, maybe less. The brakes on my truck went out while I was driving. Okay, I pushed on the brake and it was real spongy, and the truck wasn't stopping very well. And so luckily I was right outside of town, and I just basically rolled into the repair shop. But if you find yourself in that situation, and I still had some brake pressure, but you might totally lose brake pressure. If you find yourself in that situation, you got to pull off the road, use your emergency brake if necessary, and you cannot drive a car if the brakes aren't functioning. Okay, you've got to get that repaired. It is not safe to drive a car without functioning brakes. Okay, guys, hey, we made it to the end of the lecture, made it to the end of the chapter. So a lot of good information in there. There's more information about safe driving that we're going to cover after we take the permit exam next week. But there's some good information for you from chapter 11. Next lecture, we'll cover chapters 12 and 13. I hope you learned something today. I hope you got something out of it. But even if you didn't, just like my favorite professor, Dr. Phillips, used to say, it is better than a sharp stick in the eye. We'll see you.